Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Nusrat Jahan, Assistant Professor, Department of Physiology, Bashundhara Ad-din Medical College. Today I will discuss about homeostasis. Homeostasis, the homeo means sameness. And the stasis means standing still. And the definition of homeostasis is maintenance of nearly constant condition in the internal environment of our body is called homeostasis. Our body is regulated by two systems. One is the nervous system and another one is the endocrine or hormonal system. The nervous system regulates mainly the muscular and the secretory activities of our body, and the endocrine system that regulates many metabolic activities of our body. There are some major functional systems in our body. These are the respiratory system, cardiovascular system, gastrointestinal system, renal system, endocrine system, reproductive system, urogenital system, integumentary system, musculoskeletal system, and nervous system. The hormonal system and nervous system maintains homeostasis by two feedback mechanisms. One is the negative feedback mechanism and another one is the positive feedback mechanism. Negative feedback mechanism and the positive feedback mechanism. The negative feedback mechanism. The definition of negative feedback mechanism: if some factor become excessive or deficient, a control system which consists of a series of changes that return the factors towards a certain mean values, thus maintaining the homeostasis, is called negative feedback mechanism. Almost all the system of our body regulates by the negative feedback mechanism, and the negative feedback mechanism is always beneficial to our body. There are some examples of negative feedback mechanism: regulation of arterial blood pressure, regulation of water and electrolyte balance, regulation of oxygen and carbon dioxide concentration in blood, regulation of acid-base balance, regulation of body temperature, and so on. And I already say the most of the system of our body is regulated by this negative feedback mechanism. Now I explain the regulation of arterial blood pressure by negative feedback mechanism. When our arterial blood pressure rises, this causes the stretching of our vessel wall. Stretching of the vessel wall and stimulates the baroreceptors. Baroreceptors that are located in the carotid sinus and aortic arch. When the baroreceptor becomes stimulated, it sends a signal to the vasomotor center of the brain. To the vasomotor center of the brain, and inhibition of these vasomotor centers occurs. And this inhibition of these vasomotor centers that causes the decrease the transmission of nerve impulse from the vasomotor centers to the heart and the blood vessels. reduce the transmission of impulse from vasomotor center to the heart and blood vessel, and that causes the reduction of the pumping activity of heart. And dilatation of the blood vessel, peripheral blood vessel. And ultimately our blood pressure become reduced to normal and comes as a homeostatic condition. Thus, the negative feedback mechanism regulates the arterial blood pressure in our body. Now, I discuss about the positive feedback mechanism. First of all, the definition of positive feedback mechanism. If the initiating stimulus causes more of the same, that is called the positive feedback mechanism. And the positive feedback mechanism is also beneficial to our body, but sometimes it causes the vicious cycle, which is the dangerous cycle and may leading to the death. Now, I discuss how the positive feedback mechanism causes the vicious cycle. Total blood volume of our body is about 5 to 6 liter. If a person suddenly bleed 2 liter of blood, in case of the road traffic accident or the major bleeding from after the major surgical operation, this causes the reduction of pumping activity of the heart. Or cardiac pump become reduced. When the cardiac pump become reduced, that causes the reduction of BP, blood pressure, arterial blood pressure. And when the arterial blood pressure become reduced, that may lead to the reduction of blood supply to the heart. For that reason, the heart muscle become weakened. And further, the pumping activity of heart occurs, and reduce the blood supply to the heart and coronary blood flow become reduced, and the more the weakening of the heart muscle occurs. And this cycles repeats again and again until the death occurs. So, it is called the vicious cycle. But positive feedback mechanism sometimes beneficial to our body. Now, I write some beneficial importance of positive feedback mechanism. Number 1 is the childbirth. Number 2, that is the blood clotting within the blood vessel. Number 3, pre-ovulatory LH surge. Number 4, generation of nerve impulse. Number 5, insulin secretion after heavy meal. Now, I discuss about how childbirth occurs in positive feedback mechanism. during childbirth our uterus become contracted. The contraction of the uterus become started, and this contraction of the uterus causes stretching of the baby's head towards the cervix, pushing the baby's head towards the cervix, and this may leads to the stretching of the cervix, and this stretching of the cervix causes the sends a signal to the uterine muscle to produce a contraction, more powerful contraction. And when the more powerful contraction occurs, this causes the stretching of the cervix become more enough, and this stretching may leads to the more powerful contraction again, and this process repeats again and again until the more powerful contraction is occurs, that is capable to produce a childbirth. And this is the procedure to occurs the childbirth, and it is occurred by this positive feedback mechanism. Now I discuss about the blood clotting within the blood vessel. When our blood vessel become cut or ruptured, that causes to activation of some blood clotting factors, and these activated blood clotting factors may causes the activation of some other blood clotting factors, and this process again and again occurs until the blood clotting is formed. And this is another example of this blood clotting mechanism or positive feedback mechanism, and these are the beneficial effects of this positive feedback mechanism. Now I tell again the definition of homeostasis: the maintenance of nearly constant condition in the internal environment of the body. Internal environment means the extracellular fluid. Now I am discuss about the body fluid compartment. Body fluid compartment, that is about 60% of total body weight, or 42 liter, and the body fluid compartment is divided into extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid. Extracellular fluid, that is the fluid that remain outside the cell, and the intracellular fluid, that means the fluid remain inside the cell. Extracellular fluid is about 14 liter or 20% of body weight. On the other hand, the intracellular fluid, that is 28 liter or 40% of body weight. The extracellular fluid is further divided into three compartments. Number 1 is the interstitial fluid, that is about 11 liter. Plasma, that is about 3 liter, and the transcellular fluid, that is about 1 to 2 liter, and the interstitial fluid, that means the fluid in between the two cells. This is the intercellular fluid, and plasma that remain in the blood. Now the extracellular fluid is called the internal environment of the body. Why the extracellular fluid is called internal environment of our body? Because the extracellular fluid is in a constant motion in throughout the body, and for that reason it gives a constant concentration of oxygen, carbon dioxide, oxygen, amino acid, glucose and other nutrients towards the body, and cells are capable for growing, living and performing their activities in the extracellular fluid. For that reason the extracellular fluid is called the internal environment of our body. This is all about my lecture today. Thank you all. Assalamu alaikum.